What's up, guys? It is JZNES back again with another video. Today we're here to talk about Mega Man Legends 2. And yeah, so I originally played this game probably, let's see, like 2012 or 2013, I would say. Maybe it's 2014, somewhere in that range, 2012 to 2014. So, you know, 10 to 9 to 10, 8 years ago. Long time ago. It's been a while. But yeah, obviously I love the original Mega Man Legends, one of my favorite games of all time. Mega Man Legends 2 is also a pretty good game. I don't remember if I included it on the list of my 100 top games or whatever, but it would probably make it on there. It really just depends. It's pretty good overall. But it has a few things that kind of irk me about it as well. And most of all, the difficulty on some of the parts. Like, most of the game isn't really that hard, and then you'll get to these parts like the final boss and like this there's this test that you have to do. In the previous game, you just got all of your digger licenses from the story, essentially. I think you had to... You didn't have to do anything extra, as far as I remember, to get all the digger's licenses. You just kind of had to progress through the story. In this game, you actually have to do this test. And it's a timed test. You have to do 2 tests, actually. The first test is it's the same test. Actually, no, it's earlier. Okay, it's not the same test. Never mind. Don't listen to that. So you do 2 tests. First test is the first part of the test. They're both timed. And you kind of run through these rooms and you fight all these enemies or whatever. And that's kind of the test. But they have some of those annoying enemies in there, like these like flame guys with these shields. Usually you just use your rocket launcher to like take out their shields and then take them down. But in this section, you're not allowed to use your special weapons or any of that kind of stuff or any of your buster upgrades. So you're sitting there just spamming the button. There's an exploit that you can do when you're if you tap forward at the same time as mashing the button, you will essentially shoot faster. It kind of is the equivalent of later on when you get a lot of rapid upgrades for your buster, because your buster has the same upgrade system as in the original, and you can get 3 parts this time. I think you can also do that in the original. I can't really remember, but yeah, so you can upgrade your buster with these parts that you'll buy from shops or you'll find around the world, kind of thing, just like the original game. But anyway, this exploit basically is the same thing as the as if you were to upgrade your rapid. So it makes the bullets go a lot faster. The bullets, you know, like lemons or whatever you want to call them, energy blasts, you know, your shots. It makes them go a lot faster, and it's pretty much literally the only way to get through this. So you're tapping both buttons, and just, you have to be precise as fuck with your movement styles. It's funny because the game is built with double analog. You now have the ability to lock onto stuff and then move your camera around, and then also you can move around with the analog stick. But I found it more comfortable to use the D-pad. Maybe it's because I've been using the Switch controller, so it's like, you know, the thing's up here and this is up here instead of like this. But yeah, I don't know. The D-pad just worked more precisely, and especially in that mission, I couldn't rely on the impreciseness of the analog stick, which is, I know, very ironic to say, because typically you would think the analog stick would be more precise, but getting those very definite directions and instead of some kind of loose direction is actually more precise in this angle. And so a lot of times I'd be using the D-pad rather than the analog stick, which is crazy because it's a 3D game, so you'd think that's exactly not how you'd want to do it. So it's this weird combination of using the D-pad with the analog stick to look around and stuff, which is just like, it's a whole other thing. I don't think there's been games that really have done that, except for in that era, you know? Yeah, so like, you just, so I'd be doing that often. So this whole test thing is like a nightmare and a half. Like, you get 5 minutes to go through this, and you have to be super precise in each and every room, and kill the enemies within a certain amount of time, and you gotta do it fast, and just burn through this whole test. And, it really just took grinding and repetition. My friend Mayab, we were playing this together. This is one of these games that we played together, and that's kind of why it's been a minute since, you know, like the last reviews, because we've just been playing other games in the meantime. So he had save states, so that was a lot easier for him. The repetitious grind of it, though, is just, it took me forever. It took me like a couple of days to get this to work, and then finally I got the rhythm, I got, you know, everything. Also, I figured out that you can pick up the little crab circular guys and throw them at the shield guys to break down their shields. Not break down their shields, but it does a lot of damage to them, and it makes it so you don't have to hit them with a few hits of damage rather than a lot of damage. But there's two of them later on, right before the final two enemies, which are like these really aggressive, like, runny dudes, like, that are like green, and they run around, and they're just so aggressive. They're like, imagine like football players that just like, and there's two of them, and you have to like take them both out, which is, yeah, if you just had to run past the enemies, wouldn't be a big deal, not at all. But you have to defeat all of the enemies in every room, which sucks dick. So essentially, you just got to be perfect, is what it comes down to. So aside from tapping and doing all that, you have to make sure you're locking onto the right guy, and the lock-on system is good, but sometimes a little bit imprecise in terms of, you know, this is a game from like 2000, you know, it's like, it's not going to be perfect. So you often find yourself locking onto the wrong enemy. Like, imagine Ocarina of Time, but there's like a million enemies, and you can't just like easily switch between them, like you can in a lot of modern games, because the control's just not there. And these problems don't really rear themselves up that much in the rest of the game. The rest of the game utilizes these controls well, but when you're trying to do this on a time limit, you're trying to defeat these really precise enemies and these really tough enemies, it becomes hard and tedious, and you have to keep redoing this every time, and you're tapping the button, and you have to make your precise movement, so precise movement. And it just is a pain in the ass. So that can go to hell, that section. Maybe the one, like, glaring negative of the game. Also, and I think it reflects a bigger issue in the game. A lot of the really important, like, not important, a lot of the really, the really, like, rewarding side content that will give you, like, really good items. Like, for instance, there's one part, I think, that, of the entire, like, laser sword, or the laser beam, it was the laser beam, like, the shining laser, or whatever, from the first game, where, in the first game, you have to do one of the, yeah, it's much like in the first game, where you have to do that mini game, is it the dog kicking one, or is it the, or not the ball kicking one, or is it the balloon one? I don't think it's the balloon one. I think it's the ball kicking one. No, it's not the ball kicking one. It's the racing one, where you have to be precise with the racing. That is this. That is, again, they have that test, which gets you into two dungeons, two optional dungeons, of course, little side, you know, dungeons. And in this game, all the dungeons don't connect, so they're just kind of standalone, which is understandable because they're all over the world, but, you know, not quite as cool as the original game, where you kind of find out everything is connected, and you're like, oh wow, cool. Like, even a lot of the main dungeons will connect at the end of the game. But this time you're really traveling around the world, and you're going to different islands and stuff, so it's like a little bit different. So on top of all of that, the one in this game is not some kind of challenge like that. It is a quiz. A 100-question quiz. 100 fucking questions, which you cannot get a single one incorrect, or you will start at the beginning again. About history, rock music, Shit like that. Stupid stuff. Animals, insects, random fucking trivia about the stupidest shit imaginable. And the guide is extensive and massive because there's 100 questions. You know, there's 100 fucking questions. If you get any one wrong, you click any wrong answer, you are going back to the beginning. And I was determined to do it. And I did it once or twice, and I died off at the early stages. And then I did it, the time that I did, I got to like 60 or something, like pretty far into the quiz. Accidentally hit a wrong answer because I'm trying to tap through it to get to the next question. After tediously scrolling through a walkthrough of answers that is like pages and pages long, probably like 5 or 10 pages, probably like 10 pages long. It is infinitely long. And I failed. And I said, fuck this. I'm not going to do it. That's how you get the item that goes to the laser, shining laser thing or whatever. And I said, fuck it. I don't need it. I'm going to do this for real. So that's my main complaint with the game is those some of that optional side content, and especially the test that locks off 2 dungeons, one of which being a really good spot to grind for money, the other being a water dungeon, which we'll get back to that, but terrible mechanic. I'm like 100% sure Mega Man Legends 1 did not have that, and that was not a good addition to the game, was the water mechanic. Actually, let's just talk about it. Let's just fucking talk about it. So, there's a water mechanic. So, like, you can be underwater, and you create this, like, special chip so you can breathe underwater or some shit. And then you're walking around, and the movement is so fucking slow. It's so tediously slow. And you can't get anything to enhance that outside of you can get these skates that lets you skate around underwater, and the skates I feel like are even slower than they were in the original game. And so it's like, oh my god, it's just so tedious and slow, and it's like you're walking around in fucking like oil or something. I don't know how to describe it. You're walking around in Jello or something. Terrible mechanic. That can go to hell. There was a whole dungeon based around this, which was like the 3rd dungeon. There's like 5 or 6 dungeons, like big dungeons in this game. 4 of which are to get these keys, and the third or second one of the, I think it was the second one of those actually, is on this island. And then you go down underneath, and then it's essentially the water temple on like fucking nightmare fuel levels. You know, most people didn't like the water temple. I thought the water temple is more straightforward than this. This is a pain in the ass. Like, you have to like run around basically underwater and like change water levels and stuff, and the mechanic could have been cool if the water shit didn't suck so much. And it was kind of cool because it allowed you to jump farther and like farther off in the distance when you were underwater. You could basically jump from a high platform and, I don't want to say glide, but that's kind of what you were doing. You would fall, you were falling with style, you know, over to the other side of the room. You could go a long ways, and that's cool, but the movement in the water is just so fucking terrible. So needless to say, that was my least favorite dungeon out of them all. There's like a forest themed sort of dungeon. Like, it's all mechanical. It's like forest with mechanical, which was kind of cool. That one was good. That was fine. There was a fire one that was fine. It kind of sucked that whenever you would step in the fire, you'd get caught on fire, and then that would take a lot of energy off of you. You do get these shoes to where you can walk on the fire, but like, they don't work that great anyway. And then there's apparently a chip that lets you take fire damage from enemies that we didn't figure out until the end of the game. So that might have helped with the fire stuff. Not sure. This music can go to hell because this is the quiz music, I believe, for that quiz, which sucks dick. So imagine hearing this for 100 questions too. That's not the kind of music you want for 100 questions. Anyway, so yeah, although the dungeons were fine, there's an ice dungeon that was like the last one, and then there's a dungeon on the moon that you kind of go through, which was pretty long, but not too bad. You have this like gravity changing mechanic. It's kind of cool. So you can like change the gravity so you like jump higher, or like just like so you can fall into. You have like these tiles that you can like jump onto, and then you go, or you don't really jump onto them. You just kind of step onto them, and then they'll break if you have the gravity heavier or whatnot. Stuff like that. You know, pretty decent final dungeon. It was cool. So yeah, all of those were fine, except for that water one. So the dungeons were good. I like that. That's a good mechanic, good addition to the game. I felt like the dungeons in the original were fine, but these are all kind of themed, and that was kind of cool. You're searching for the keys and whatnot. That was pretty neat. And all the optional dungeons had like usually good stuff in them, and they were good grinding spots for money. Which you need a lot of in this game because the upgrades are like even more expensive than the last game, and getting all the parts and stuff is like super expensive. To get the final parts that like max out each of your stats, the attack one is 800,000 ZENI. There was one item in the original, I believe. I think it was either the missile launcher or upgrading the laser. That was like 1 million ZENI, which was a lot. But in this game, like, so many things are hitting that level, you know. The others were like 600,000 and 500,000 for the other two items that would max out your stats. What I found was that doesn't really work so well. So I had these ones that kind of they would give you more of each stat. If you just max out one stat, you can only max out 3 stats because the max amount of buster parts you can add is 3. So I have this one that was like, it gave you 2, 2, 2, 2, and then 1. So 2 of everything, and then 1 rapid. And then there was one that was like 3 and 3. So it was like 3 energy, 3 rapid, and then like 1 range. And then the other one was like 3 attack, and then 2 rapid or energy or something like that. And it all balanced out. All my stats weren't maxed, but they were mid-max is what Mab called it, and I like that. I think that's good. They were good enough to all combine to make pretty much the best way. My Buster, by the end, in the final boss, my Buster went fast, it was powerful, and it just took the final boss down, like, super, not fast, but, like, it worked out decent, you know. I liked that, and I thought that was really good. So I found the perfect balance, in other words. So buying all of those parts is kind of unnecessary. Now, you know, I talked about, like, the shining laser and stuff, and there's, like, all the items from the original game. A lot of them are, like, a lot harder to find this time. Find the parts for and stuff, because it's a more expansive world, and it's not as clearly spelled out where everything's at. Sometimes you have to look in, like, a pot or something, which you aren't always able to do, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense that something would even be there. Me and May have got, like, a few of the weapons and stuff, but the one you want is the rocket launcher, and it becomes very overpowered. I felt like in the other game, most of the other items were actually useful. I liked the cannon, or whatever, from the previous game. I thought that was kind of my favorite one. But the rocket launcher in this game is just infinitely better than everything else in terms of just all around, you know, better range, better attack, better everything, you know. And if you get to the final stage of the energy, you can actually get it to be infinite energy, Now, all of the weapons in this game have a stamina bar, which I don't believe was in the original, but so you'll fire off a few shots, and then the stamina bar will deplete, and you'll have to kind of wait for it to come back or whatnot. So that kind of put the final boss, the final boss, the second form of final boss, to be a little bit harder. But I made it in the end. The interesting thing about that whole thing is you go through this long dungeon, and then you're in the final boss room, and I realized, oh, I forgot to fill up my canteen or whatever, and so I figured I'd have to go all the way back out. So me and May have fought the final boss for a bunch of times, and then at the end of last night, when we were about to ready to stop, you know, or whatnot, I realized that there was a refractor that I picked up along the way that you can use to activate this elevator to take you all the way back to the beginning, which you can use to go back to the, they call it Terra, the planet, you know, like Earth or whatever, so that you can upgrade your items and refill your canteen and do all that stuff. So, and then the final dungeon gives you a lot of money to play with, and there's actually a spot like right at the beginning where you can back these enemies into this corridor, and just they'll keep infinitely respawning, and you can just shoot them. And it took me like 30 minutes to get like 600,000 Zenny, which was like really good. So yeah, that's cool. But yeah, most of the upgrades I did in this game were to my rocket launcher, which I upgraded, like I said, all of the energy and all of that kind of stuff in the attack. And all the final upgrades were like 1,000,000, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. The final upgrade to get it to be infinite energy or whatever, like, that was only 500,000, so I did that. But the other ones, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and grind this out. It wasn't really necessary to begin with. But had I'm sure it would have been awesome. But yeah, so that's maybe like one negative, is that like all the items aren't as good as they were in the original, and they're not as necessary, and they kind of give you the rocket launcher like almost right away. So it's like really almost right away, because I remember we picked that up, and I'm like, this takes down the shield guy's shields, and so we just use that for the whole game, because there's a lot of those shield guys around. The whole status effect thing, like the being on fire and being like electrocuted to where you move like super slow. You basically move slower than you do in the water when you get like this electrocuted thing, and it's terrible. And then I don't remember anything like that being in the original game. There's a lot of like experimental ideas here that just like really don't land, and they just kind of serve to make the game more tedious and not you know, actively detract from the game. But I do like the game overall. It's not like that. There are a lot of positive things to the game. Like I said, the dungeons are good. It's a fun game to play. It controls, I think, definitely better than the original, as far as I can remember, especially with the second analog stick to control your camera and all of that. I think that's really nice. Just everything feels better. It's a better game to control. I kind of had some trouble with it when I originally played it, but now playing it again, I'm like, yeah, this does actually really control good. There's a lot of items to get. There's like upgrades to your armor and stuff. You got that in the original game, but like basically every time you beat a dungeon or you would do something significant, there would be more upgrades to get. So constantly doing that, and those upgrades weren't even that expensive. Those were like 75,000 to get like, you know, the good ones. There was like 100,000 to get like the final one, which is pretty good. The final one is like 75% damage cut, and it shows so beautifully. The enemies would take like slivers of health off of you, which was amazing. But the final boss like still just wrecked you if you weren't fucking like playing good. So like I can't imagine what that would have been like with no armor, or like less armor or whatnot. So yeah, that's good. I like that. In terms of like the story and stuff, that all kind of felt pretty good. I do kind of like the story of the original better in a way, but that's just me. This one really didn't Like, it's very, like, it's all about, like, in the original game, you find out that Mega Man's part of, like, this whole thing of, like, these ancient, like, guys or whatever, this ancient robot society or some shit that, like, lived on the moon, and they're trying to eliminate all these humans or whatever. And it really doesn't play that much of a role in here. There really isn't that much story. They stop you a lot to do cutscenes and stuff, but there's really not a lot going on with that. I still don't know if they really resolved the thing about the mother load. Like, I don't think they really did. So, yeah, I think that just kind of got dropped, which is kind of crazy. And a lot of that is, like, you know, like Mega Man Legends 3 was supposed to happen. And, you know, they just kind of leave Mega Man on the moon. Because they assumed a third game was coming or whatnot. That's kind of the ending of the game, too, is, like, Roll and Tron have to, like, work together to get Mega Man off of the moon, and it's just, like, we never see that happen, because then the credits roll, or that's actually post-credits that happens, and that's it. I mean, that's all there is to it, you know? It's just like, oh, okay, so the story's kind of a little bit disappointing, like, they added some new characters and stuff, they actually brought back the characters from, Tron Bond, like Glide in them, and those bots, and all of that stuff, which I was very confused about the first time around. I just thought they were new characters for this game, even though it was like, it seemed like there was some history there, or whatnot, and it turns out, yeah, there was some history from Tron Bond, so I'm glad we played that. It does feel like a fitting conclusion, like, of the previous two games, but also, the story doesn't really conclude, which is really weird, you know, like, gameplay-wise and, like, character-wise, they're all back, you know? It feels like, oh, okay, this is our moment. This is our Metal Gear Solid 4. We're gonna bring everybody back and, you know, try to end things. And they don't really end things, you know? It's just odd. And then we never got the follow-up, you know? Because it got canceled or whatever. So, yeah. It's really strange. But, yeah, I don't know. It's really sort of an awkward thing there. But the game overall, I feel like, is good. They give you a lot of side content and a lot of things if you want to go out and kind of grind for money to buy things and that kind of thing. Upgrade things and whatnot, and yeah, upgrade your weapons and your life and stuff. There's not very many life upgrades like there was in the original game. It's more about your canteen. I mean, that kind of still plays like the original game where you need lots of cartridges on your canteen. I actually had like 20 something, like 23 or something, and then I just used all the money I'd gotten from the final dungeon to get to like 61 or whatnot, and then that's how I ended up beating the final boss, was using all of that to basically get me through. And I found by the end of the second one, I literally had one hit I could take, and I got really lucky to have taken out the second form of the final boss and beat the game there. I literally could only have taken one more hit, so yeah, so I got lucky. So maybe I needed more energy cartridges. I wasn't playing my best game though. I had beat the first form of the final boss with only using like 8 or like 10 or something of my life cartridges originally. Because originally I only had 13 because I had used 10 of them in the dungeon leading up to there, and I didn't know you could go back. So I probably used like 8 of those and then got to the final boss. So realistically, I could have done a lot better on the first fight, and then just like got to the final boss with like 40 or 50 extra, but I only had like 30 or 20 or something, so I only had like a few life refills to even work with, but it worked out in the end. Like the bosses in general usually take a lot of hits, and they're cool, and they all have their own like kind of little gimmick or whatever, but they're bullet sponges, and they take a lot of hits, and a lot of them do those like status effect things, which just get really fucking annoying. And there's stuff everywhere you kind of have to dodge, and so yeah, it just gets super ridiculous. But it's still good overall. Graphically, very good looking PS1 game. It's the very end of the life cycle of the PS1, but very good still. And the music, I would say, is like really good. It can be atmospheric at times. It can be sort of epic at times, and like that kind of thing. Um, and I was talking about the characters and stuff earlier. Obviously, they bring back like the Bonds and all of them, and they're trying to get the keys before you do, and then you end up kind of working with them in the end, which is pretty cool. But yeah, they have like lots of ridiculous like plans and lots of different things. There's like a train sequence where you're chasing after them on a train kind of thing. One where you're in this like lava room and you have to like shoot down Bond to like Bon like the robot one to like take the key that he's taking, which is ridiculous. Okay, there's this one room. This is actually another one of those difficulty things that really pissed me off. There's one room where what is the deal with that room? There's these Reaver bots that'll like pop up everywhere, and then there's these keys that you have to get, and the keys are like sentient keys that like run around. And then first of all, there's like this giant chicken thing that shoots missiles at you that's like kind of stationary, so you have to take that thing out first. But the Reaver bots around you, they I think they freeze you, or they paralyze you or something. It's one of those status effect kind of things, and they're just everywhere, and they will infinitely respawn, so you just have to keep jumping over them, and you're trying to catch these like really fast keys at the same time. Another really annoying moment. So there's a lot of like little annoying things like that I don't really feel like there was a lot of them in the first game, and if there was, they were kind of optional annoying things, you know. So just stuff like that I just can't really get down with. But the rest of the game is good, and it's some standard dungeon stuff, and that's cool, and a lot of good optional content, like I said, and a lot of frustrating optional content. So it's kind of a half and half sort of thing, you know. It's like there's a lot. I mean, it's really like a 90-10 kind of thing. That 10% of the time the game is really frustrating, and then 90% of the time the game is actually doing really good, or maybe like 80-20 sort of thing. I don't know. But yeah, like, for sure, like, overall, the game itself is pretty good. And it's a good follow-up to Mega Man Legends 1. But for me, Mega Man Legends 1 is more classic, and it's more tightly focused. And I like the aspect of it being kind of on the one island and everything connecting and all of that kind of stuff. It's just more dense. It's one location, and it's a very dense location. Here we're rapid fire. Like, go to the next location, next location, next location. It gives you a lot of good variety, but I just kind of miss this like interconnected island sort of thing. I thought that was really cool about the original. I'm that's kind of a thing I like in games, is when they do that kind of stuff and you're exploring like one area and it's really well realized and kind of interconnected and whatnot. So it's kind of something I prefer, but this is cool as well. You know, this has its own charm and its own merit as well. So yeah, like overall, I enjoyed the game. Like I said, graphically it's pretty cool. It's good. The music is good. The gameplay is good. If not like sometimes frustrating in certain parts, and that's like maybe like I said, my like one big negative is those moments that I've described, you know. But aside from those moments, the rest of the game feels really good to play. The save points are pretty frequent to kind of, because if you die, you kind of just go back to the title screen and you have to go back to your last save point. So those are good enough to kind of get you through. That's not too bad. You know, just stuff like that. There's a lot of quality of life improvements with like the controls and whatnot, and I think that's all really beneficial 2, is the soundtrack over already? Are you kidding me? That's it? All really beneficial to the overall experience there. So yeah, overall, great game. Brings back a lot of good things about the original, and it adds a lot of things that can be good and can be bad at the same time. And, but overall it's good. And, I liked it. I had a good time with it. I remember just... I think I had remembered a lot of the frustrating moments, and that kind of soured my experience of the game. But I had forgotten the fun and the good moments and a lot of the good things that the game was doing. Remembering the bad stuff, you know? So, not that I thought this was a bad game, but I remember not being as good as the original. And that still stands true in a lot of regards, but I can see it being up to taste, you know, in a sense. But it is a good sequel, and it is a good follow-up to the original. I'm glad we have it, rather than not. I just wish we had Mega Man Legends 3 as well, and they hadn't canceled that, and that would have been great. But, yeah, so overall, I liked it. I'm going to give it an 8.3 out of 10 for Mega Man Legends 2. So, until next time, this has been JZNES saying keep it classic. Stick around for more reviews, underrated games, and I'll see you guys in the next one. JZ out.